Ladies and gentlemen, drivers, gig workers, and everyone in between, welcome to This Week in Rideshare podcast. I'm your host, Jared Hoffa. It is Friday, February 14th, and this week, Waymo barrels through a pothole, Lyft eyes robotaxis, and riders pay more. Legal Rideshare breaks it down. And from Legal Rideshare, I'm joined by the co-founder and lead attorney, Bryant Greening. Bryant, happy Friday and happy Valentine's Day.
Happy Friday, Jared, and a happy Valentine's Day to you too.
It's
Love is in the
I love how Valentine's Day is like the coldest day of the year. It's freezing in Chicago. It's been a horrible week of weather. If you're in the Midwest, it's not been great.
No, it really has not been, but it's good weather for cuddling if you're in a
Yeah,
committed
exactly,
relationship.
exactly. And what a good, perfect day for that, right? All right, so we're gonna jump into our stories this week. I love discussing the craziness with Waymo, and we're gonna start with that. Waymo's went full speed through a pothole. And this is from Road and Track, and they reported, quote, Waymo's driverless fleet of Jaguar tends to perform exceedingly well in normal driving situations, but a pothole in the middle of a San Fran intersection found a weak point in its programming. There's a video that showed this from a local TV station, ABC7, in the News Bay Area. They posted it to YouTube last week, showing one of Waymo's self-driving cars absolutely sending it through a large pothole that formed on one of the streets. The news report claims that the autonomous vehicle caught on camera was just one of several Waymos that slammed across the hole before construction crews could properly block it off from traffic. So I don't know why I find these stories so funny when there's not any harm to people, but it's just kind of what I think we just discussed this sort of thing a week or two ago, where if something's out of the programming for Waymo, it just they literally said it just absolutely sends it, which can be quite dangerous.
Yeah, I think that this story can be taken as humorous when you're just talking about what actually happened in this particular event, but ultimately it really highlights the difference between a robot and a human. We talk about ways in which humans are able to adapt to scenarios in robots are not. Like that road, I'm sure, to the robotaxi looked flat, looked even. The hole was filled with water. There was no reason for it to detect a divot of any kind. But a human would be able to perceive, wait, there's a difference in the texture. There's a difference in the way that the road is shining. That you can see these little minute details that based on our experience tell us that that is a large hole that we shouldn't drive through. And running through potholes can be very dangerous. It can damage the vehicle. We've had cases in the past where people have gotten really injured by being jarred from being thrown around in the vehicle because of the change in elevation. So luckily in this situation, we're not having, there was no injury. It doesn't seem like there was really any real, devastating impact. But this just highlights the issues that these robo taxis are not ready to deal with. When things are based on perception and based on learned experience that have taken years of driving and for each individual human to understand, years of experiencing the tangible world for each human being to be able to pick out these road defects, the robots just aren't there yet. The technology is not able to detect them.
Yeah, no, exactly. And there's something that it made me think of immediately, because they talk about, first the article talks about, oh, is this one robotaxi, this one Waymo, but then it says other Waymos started doing the exact same thing, and I could see a scenario very near in the future, because a lot of these Waymos are doing the same routes. If there's a serious accident, the Waymo doesn't stop. The Waymos behind are going to keep doing the same thing. It could end up not being a one car pile. It could be a multiple car pileup or a multiple car disaster. I don't know if you saw the movie. I think it's something, I forget the name of the movie, but it's like the end of the world and the Teslas are smashing into each other. I mean that could be a real scenario here, and like you said, it's kind of funny now, but it could lead to serious issues, serious injuries.
Particularly as you're alluding to, as there's more and more of these cars on the road. So, a human is going to be able to see that this car has just run into a big pothole and assuming that that vehicle is giving sufficient following distance, they're going to react appropriately. But the Waymo, the robo taxi, they're just going to keep going. They're not going to be able to perceive that there was some defect ahead, and that could be a real problem.
Yeah, 100%. So, we'll see. I'm sure they're going to update the system for this error. I imagine we'll keep seeing kind of weird stories like this as things go on, but we will see. Time will tell. Our next story is, and we again discussed this recently. Lyft is rolling out robotaxis by 2026. This is from Reuters. They reported, quote, U.S. ride-hailing firm Lyft is planning to launch as soon as 2026 fully autonomous robotaxis in Dallas, being powered by mobilized technology. And this is from the CEO, David Ryder. He said on Monday, a Japanese conglomerate with experience managing fleets will own and finance the Mobileye-equipped vehicles that will show up on the Lyft app, Ryder said in a post on X. Not a ton of information yet on this, but we did just discuss this, and it looks like they're now officially trying to get into the robotaxi game.
Yeah, no, obviously,
Right.
this was not going to take long for Lyft to dive into. As we see the future starting to become the present, we're understanding that robotaxis, autonomous vehicles, vehicles in which passengers don't have to have the engagement with the driver, like that's what's coming. So Lyft has to make a decision. Are we going to get with the times, or are we going to fall behind? And obviously what we see here is that they're choosing to get with it. So I don't know that Lyft has the technology on its own, and frankly, neither does Uber, but to have these partnerships with autonomous vehicle makers, people who are in this space right now and making sure to work out all of those technological kinks, um, Lyft's definitely going to be on board, because that is the future of rideshare.
Yeah, they're saying 2026. I feel like the landscape's going to be very different in a year from now. If they're going to start just rolling them out, I can't imagine even where Tesla will be in a year, where Waymo will be in a year. So it's interesting that it's going to take them that long, because they don't say if it's quarter one or quarter four. Very interesting stuff. So yeah, they're getting on the quote unquote bandwagon, but it could be a very different world in a year. A year ago we were discussing, is any vehicle available, ready to be on the road, and we both said no. And now here we
Right.
are a year later. So it'll be interesting to see what they do.
Yeah, well, and I think what we're going to see a year from now is if these vehicles are ready from a technology standpoint, Lyft can just kind of plug them in. The
Yeah.
other Waymo and Uber, they're all trying to ease into these robo taxis. They're still working out the technology, but Lyft, by kind of lying in wait right here, is letting all these other companies work out the technology. And then as soon as it's ready, there's no reason they can't just incorporate it. Just add the button on their app and say, okay, we're ready to go. Do you want an autonomous vehicle? So I don't know that there's going to be that much that it takes to roll these things out, assuming that the company that they're partnering with is ready to go.
Yeah, that's a really good point. It's an absolutely very good point. It sounds like that's what they're doing, kind of waiting for everyone else to do it for them, and then they'll jump on. And our final story this week, Massachusetts is eyeing a $15 airport fee for riders. Yikes. This is from Boston Globe. They reported, quote, Massport charges ride apps a $3.25 fee for pickups or drop-offs at the airport, which the ride-hailing giants then pass on to customer fares. But the agency that oversees this is discussing hiking those fees to $5.50 each way starting in July, and then raising them to $7.50 each way starting July 2027, according to the materials presented at the Massport board. The senior director, his name is Josh Gold, of public policy and communications at Uber, said he was concerned that the eventual $15 round trip surcharge would batter consumers' wallets and cost Uber drivers reliable business. He also questioned why ride-hailing apps face higher surcharges than taxis or personal vehicles, which pay no fees to come and go and are the most impactful to congestion. It's hard to say this, Bryant, but I'm weirdly agreeing with Uber on this. Why
Yeah.
isn't, if there, first off, it's a lot of money. It doesn't seem like it, but it's getting passed to the consumers. And why is it only hitting the Uber and Lyft, and not taxis and other people if they're going to do it this way?
Yeah, no, I'm on the same page. I think that's a crazy fee, and it's going to hurt the consumer, the customer. It's going to hurt the driver. I'm can understand if they want to try to create like a level playing field with taxi drivers. Perhaps the taxi industry has been so battered by the rideshare industry that maybe you do have a slightly higher fee for rideshare and try to push some of that business back to the taxis. I would understand that from a government perspective. But to make it this high, you're going to kill the rideshare industry as it relates to airports. Like people can't afford that. An airport ride going up by $15, for a round trip, that's a totally different ride. That's a totally different price. So you're going to find people abandoning rideshare, which is bad for the driver. And it's also going to make it much harder for consumers to get those rides. Like I can remember trying to get to the airport when we had to rely on taxis and living in an area where you didn't just walk outside and hail one with, by putting your arm up. If you had to plan that ahead, that was a real problem. And if we're moving backwards in time where it's going to be more difficult to get that ride to the airport, I think consumers are really going to be in an uproar. So I'm all for trying to hold rideshare companies accountable, pay better for drivers, do anything to make this a better experience for driver and customer. But I don't think this is a solution for either of those things. I think this is just punitive, and it doesn't really make sense from the consumer standpoint.
Yeah, I mean, I'm reading the article here again, and yeah, I mean, this is really a numbers game. They're saying here, that the fiscal year last year, they said the ride app drop off fees alone generated over 15 million of revenue for the airport. That was up from 13 million the year prior, and they're also stating that the drop offs are increasing 14%. So the way I read this is that whoever's in charge of this policy is saying there's money to be made here, and they're trying to grab all of it. But like you said, adding $15 more changes the ride completely. If it doesn't seem like a big deal, but that is a big deal, and it changes. People are going to be hesitant to even take the ride to the airport, and it's gonna hurt drivers, like you said.
Right. I think this might end up costing Massachusetts generally. Like you see changes in fees all the time. If it's 3.25, okay, maybe it becomes $3.30, and nobody really notices the difference, but that could become millions of dollars for the government. I can understand slight tweaks for inflation or whatever, but to raise it by almost double or more than double it by 2027, that's nuts. That doesn't make any sense. It's not how consumers are used to being treated. Everybody understands that fees can tick up over time, but that's a real slap in the face. So I don't really see this playing out. And I do see a lot of backlash if it goes into effect, and perhaps even before it goes into effect, when people realize how this is going to hit their wallets.
Yeah, 100%. I would love to hear from drivers your thoughts on this. If any drivers are in Massachusetts, what you think. I mean, even how it is now, because they've already increased. They already have a fee now. It'd be interesting to hear what you guys are experiencing right now. So that is the stories this week, and as always, Brian, I will give you the final word before we head off into the weekend.
Yeah, before we start this holiday weekend, we do like to remind everybody that it is vital that you reach out to Legal Rideshare if you're in an accident or if you're injured on the job. Legal Rideshare helps with things like recovering costs of medical bills, lost wages, pain and suffering. Any damage that you sustain, we will help fight to put that money back in your pocket plus some. So please don't hesitate to reach out to us. LegalRideshare.com has all of our contact information. Time is of the essence, so do not wait.
Great, thank you, Brian. And as I like to say, that is the end of This Week in Rideshare. See you next week.